This video is a small crash course on Tailwind CSS. You may have heard that the best way to learn any programming language is by building projects. So in this crash course, we are going to learn the fundamentals as well as some advanced topics of Tailwind by building a fully responsive waitlist page of a hosting platform. I've picked this project from Codewell, which is a website that provides real design templates that we can use to practice and improve our web development skills. So this is how it looks like. This is the mobile view of the website, this is the tablet view, and this is how it looks like on the desktop. So for this project, you need to have Node.js and Visual Studio Code installed in your machine. If you don't have them already, don't worry. I'll give their links in the description box down below. You can download from there. So let's head on to setting up our project. So I'm on my terminal. Here I'm going to first create my project folder. So let me navigate to the folder where I want to create it. So I'm going to create it in my documents folder and create a new directory. Let's call it waitlist page and enter. Now let's open up this project in Visual Studio Code. So here I'll open up within documents. There is a project that is called waitlist page. So now let's open up the terminal that is provided by Visual Studio Code. Let me minimize myself. Okay. So the first thing that we have to do here is to initialize this project. For that, I'll write the command npm init-y. This is going to create a package.json file. Next, I'm going to create a public folder in which I'm going to keep my index.html and my CSS file. So let's first create our index.html file. We can have a basic code of index.html file ready if we write the shortcut exclamation and hit enter. And this has created a basic HTML file for us, and within the title we can give it waitlist page and save it. Now let's install Tailwind to our project. If you are already aware of how to install it, then you can jump right to the timestamp given on the screen to start building the project. But if you don't know it, then you can follow along. So for installation, we are going to refer to the Tailwind documentation. So this documentation is pretty neat and everything is written in a clear and crisp manner. For the installation, we are going to use this Tailwind CLI, but if you are using any framework, then you can go to the framework guide and follow along. You can also use PostCSS and CDN. So we are going to use this. The first step in the installation process is to install Tailwind CSS. For that, we first install it via npm. So let's copy this line and here I'm going to paste it. What this is going to do is it's going to install Tailwind in our package.json file. Once installed, we would be able to see it in here. Okay, it's installed and here we can see that version is 3.3.3. The next step is to create our tailwind.config.js file. So this will contain all the basic Tailwind configurations that we have. So let's hit enter and this has created our tailwind.config.js file. Okay, in the next step, we need to configure our template paths. What does this mean? So within the content section of our tailwind.config.js file, we need to specify the path of the files in which we are going to use Tailwind. So let's copy this from here, go within content and paste it. As I've told previously also that we are going to keep our HTML file and CSS file in our public folder. So I'm going to write public in here. You can remove JS from here as well because we are just going to have our HTML file, but that's fine for now and save it. Before proceeding with the next steps, let's first understand how Tailwind CSS works under the hood. So there is an input file that we need to create, which will contain the Tailwind styles and also some custom CSS in case we want to have it. Then what Tailwind does is it processes this file using a script and convert the Tailwind styles into vanilla CSS, which is then stored in an output file. So whenever we make any changes to the input file or say add any utility classes in our index.html file, we need to rerun that Tailwind script so that a new output is generated. And then this output is used in our index.html file. Okay. Once you have understood this, it will be easier for you to understand the next steps. So as a next step, we need to add the Tailwind directive. That is, we first need to create our input.css file. So I'll copy these 3 lines. I'll create a new folder, call it source, in which we are going to keep our input file. So we'll create a new file called input.css and paste these 3 lines. So let me explain you what these 3 lines are doing. This is nothing but a directive. So this @Tailwind directive is telling the CSS processor to inject the base, components and utility styles into our CSS. So now we need to create our output file. For creating that output file, we need to move on to the next step. This is the 4th step. So here what we have to write is we have to write that Tailwind script. So I will write npx tailwind css. As the input, I want the input to be taken as source input.css, and as an output, I want it to create a new output file. So I'll call that output file as style.css. So you can see in the public folder, it has created a style.css file. So in the style.css file, it has injected the base styles, which is called preflight, and then in case we add any components, that will be shown, and then any utilities that we are going to use in our index.html file, that will get reflected. But you might be wondering that we will have to rerun this Tailwind script over and over again whenever we make any changes to our inputs.css file, or whenever we add any utility classes to our index.html. So for that purpose, we can use a watch flag. So I'll write this and create -- watch. So this watch is going to look out for any changes that we are going to make and then reflect those changes in our style.css file. So I'll keep that running in the background. Also, if you don't want to write this line every time you are opening this project again, what you can do, you can go to your package.json file, and here within script, you can create a new script called as build, or you can call it anything you want, and then write the same line in here and save it. So next time you just can simply write npm run build, so it will automatically run the script in the background. So once this is done, the last thing that is left is to have our style.css file in our index.html file and save it. Now we are good to go. We can start building our project. So we will first create the mobile layout, then tablet, and then desktop. It's always advisable to have a mobile first approach while building any front-end project. That is, first designing or creating the mobile layout and then proceeding on to layering on any changes that are required for bigger screens like tablet or desktop, because it leads to less redundant code and also gives us more space to add in more features for bigger screens. So let's have a look at how our mobile view looks like. Here, if we have a look at a mobile view, the header section, then there is a main section, and then below it, there is a footer section. So let's first create those in our index.html file. So I'll create a div. Within it, I'm going to have one header section, one main section, and below it, I'm going to have the footer section. If we observe our project, we have a background color that is there in our project. So for adding background color in Tailwind CSS, we go to the documentation and search for background color. We can see here for adding the background color, we have to write bg dash and then we have to give the color. Apart from white, black, transparent, current, and inherit, there are also numbers that are attached. Let's understand what those numbers are. So if we search for default color palette, we can see that all the default colors that are provided by Tailwind, they have these categories starting from 50 up to 950, wherein 50 is the lightest shade of it and 950 is the darkest one. So if we search for the color that we want, I think amber should work fine, and the category should be 50. So if we go to our body, give it a class, say bg amber 50, and save it. If you are wondering how I'm getting that drop down, this drop down. So this drop down is basically a plugin that I'm using in my Visual Studio Code provided by Tailwind, that is called Tailwind CSS Installation. Once you install it, you would be able to see all the options that are there related to the utility class that you want to use, and save it. Now let's see this project on a live server. So if you right click and click on open with live server, if you're not getting that option, don't worry. You can also install another plugin that is called live server on your Visual Studio Code. Once you install it, you would be able to see this option that I'm getting, that is called open with live server. As you can see, the background color is now changed to amber. Let me first open up this on our mobile layout. So around 430 should be fine. So for checking this responsiveness, you can increase or decrease the size of your screen so that you are able to see if it's working fine on all your screen sizes that you want this project to be in. Now, if we have a look at the mobile view, there is a padding that is there from top and bottom and also from left and right. So let's first give this div that we have a class of minimum height of screen. So this is giving the minimum viewport height as 100. Why we want it? So that it looks good on all the screen sizes. Now we need to give the padding. So whenever we give padding in vanilla CSS, we specify a number. For example, 16 pixels or say 4 rems. But here in Tailwind, we have a different numbering system. Let me explain you that. So if we go to here and write default scaling, so the leftmost column is given for the numbering system that we have in Tailwind, then we have in rem, and then we have in pixels. 1 unit of Tailwind CSS is equivalent to 0.25 rem, which is equivalent to 4 pixels. So you can understand it in that manner that 1 when divided by 4 gives you the size in rem, and when multiplied by 4 gives you the size in pixel. So now I want to use padding. Then search for padding. So for padding, we just have to write P, give a hyphen, and give the number. So 0 denotes 0 pixels. Now, what would 1 denote? 1 would denote 4 pixels or say 0.25 rems. If I want to give a padding from left and right, the same padding, I can write PX instead of P. And if I want to give same padding from top and bottom, I can rather write PY. So I need both PX as well as PY. So I'll give PX as say 6 and give PY as say 3 and save. Now in the mobile view, let's have a look at the header section. In the header section, we have a logo, a button which says hoster is hiring, and also an icon. Also, there are multiple images that are used in this whole project. So when we get the project from Codewell, they also provide you with the SVGs of these logo as well as these images. So I've saved all of them in my assets folder within the public folder. I have also dropped a link of the GitHub of this particular project in the description box, so you can take those assets from there or directly from Codewell as well. So in the header section, I'll create 3 things. One is going to be a div which will contain our 2 components. That is going to be an image which is kept in assets folder, that is called logo.svg. I'll keep the alt as empty. And then I have a button which says poster is hiring. After that, I'll create another div for the icon that I have. Now for having the icons, you can use any sort of icons. There are hero icons, there are font awesome icons. Let's search for font awesome icon library. You just have to write this and search for bar. So you can see we have these 3 bars. You just have to click on it and it gets copied, paste it over here. But before using that, we also need to specify the CDN of it in the head section of our project. So let's search for the CDN of font awesome icon. Then here I'll just copy the link tag, paste it over here and save. Now we would be able to see these bars in our website. Yes, now it is there. The next thing is we need to have these 2 elements on the left and this one on the right. So for having that, let's give a class of flex to our header section. So if you hover on this flex, you would be able to see how it is written in vanilla CSS. So instead of writing display flex here, you just have to write flex. Also need to give it a justify between property, which sets the content like having a space in between, and save. Yes, now it's shifted to the right. These 2 are on the left. We do not have to work on this one. We just have to work on these 2. The logo looks fine, but we need to have them side by side. So again, we need to give it a class of flex. I want to have them vertically in the center. So I will write item center, which gives it a property of align item center, and also justify center. So now we have both of these together, but we need to have some spacing just like we have in here. So let's add some spacing. So for adding the spacing, there is a property called as gap property. So we can give this gap property of 2. There is also gap X, gap Y. So gap X give the gap between the rows having the multiple flex or grid items, and also gap Y, which gives the gap between the columns. So I can generally use gap 2 as well. Now let's start working on this button. For this button, if we observe this button is having a gradient background, but I have only told you how to add a normal background color. So how will we add this? We don't have to worry about it because Tailwind CSS makes it pretty easy. If we search for linear gradient in here, you can see that along with BG, we have to give this gradient utility class and also give the direction. Since we want from left to right, so I will have to use this particular utility class BG gradient 2R. So I will give it a class of BG gradient you can see I'm getting all the options. So I'll write 2R. Now since it's 2R, I have to give it two values, from and to. So from, I will say orange 400. I want to red 400 and save it. Yes. Now we can see we have a gradient in here. Now if we observe this one, we have text bit small. The text color is white. Also there is a padding and also there is a border radius. So let's start adding that. First, let me keep the text size of it. So for adding the text size, let me show you the documentation. So we have multiple options in here like text XS, small, base, large, XL, 2XL, and so on and so forth. So this XL basically have a font size of 0.75 rem, which is equivalent to 12 pixels, and a line height of 1 rem. This is how you can observe all of these in here. For example, they don't have 17 pixels. Like there is nothing between text base and text LG because it's not generally used in any of the projects. So I will give it a class of text XS. I will give it a text color. So I just can write text hyphen and give it a color of white. And let's also give it a padding. So I'll give PX as 2.5 and PY as 1.5. Okay, and save it. Let's see. Refresh. Yes, and now it's resembling. The only last thing that is left is to give it a border radius. So for giving the border radius, we have to use this rounded class. And then it is suffixed with SM, MD, LG, XL, and so on. So I will give it rounded and say 2XL and save. So this 2XL is giving a border radius of 1 rem, which is 16 pixels. So let's see. Now it's looking perfectly fine. If we see, both are resembling perfectly. Now let's start working on our main section. So if we have a look at it, in the main section we have an image, and then in the another part of it we have some text and also a form. So let's create two divs in our main section. The first div will take care of the images that we have, the other will take care of the form and the text. So let's work on the first div. On the first div we have 4 images. It's not a single image, we have 4 which are all given in the Codewell assets. So I will first have these images. The source is going to be assets. I'll keep the first one as the blue one, followed by pink, purple, and the main image. So I will import the blue SVG, give it alt of empty, this hero image, and save it. Let's see. Okay, they are not coming on the top of each other, but we want them to come on top and also have a size a bit smaller and have them in the middle of the screen. So for having that, let's add a class of flex and give it item center so that it's vertically in the center, and also give it a justify center property and save. Okay, now we have, instead of in a vertical manner, they are kept in a horizontal manner, but still not on top of each other. So what we are going to use here is the CSS position property. Since I want to keep the blue one as it is and rest on top of one another, I'm going to use this absolute property. Okay, my bad, why I'm writing it in the alt. Let me give it a class and keep it in here. And I'm going to copy the same thing for rest as well. Now save it. Let's see. Now they are on the top of each other, but the problem is the size is very big. So let's give it a size as well. So let me specify the height. For specifying the height, you just have to write h followed by the number, the numbering system that I have told previously as well. So I'll give it a height of say 64, and I'll give this to the rest of the images as well. Now let's see. Now it's looking much better. It's just that all the rest of the images have gone behind this main image. So before working on that, let's also observe one thing. There is no spacing that is left between these two. So if we have a look at here, there is some spacing between all the categories that we have created. There is space in here as well. So let's first create that. So I'm going to go in my main div and give it a class of flex, give it flex column direction, and I will give a gap. So the gap can be around 16. Okay, save it. Yes, now it's looking perfectly fine. Now let's work on the behind images that we want in this manner. For using that, we will use the rotate property that we have. So if we search for rotate, so I can rotate those images in a manner that they are clearly visible how they are looking in here. So for rotating, we have certain fixed angles provided by Tailwind like 2, 3, 6, 12, 45 and so on. But what if I want to use my arbitrary rotation angle, say 15 degrees? So for that, if you navigate to this arbitrary values, you can see if we give square bracket and within it, if we use the arbitrary values, that's easily doable in Tailwind CSS. You need not follow all the things that are present in here. So we are using this custom rotation. So I will not rotate my main image. I will keep it as it is, but I will rotate the rest of the images. So if you observe, the maximum rotation that is given is to the blue image and a bit less to the pink and then a bit more less to the purple. So let's give it a rotate property. I will rotate the first one by 15 degrees. Since the rotation is not towards the right but towards the left, I also have to give minus. So I will give it rotate of a bit more, so say 30 degrees. And to this one, I will give it a rotation of 45 degrees, which is already present. So that is called rotate 45. So I can simply write rotate 45 and save it. Let's see. Hit refresh. Okay, they're looking fine, but the blue one is not coming perfectly. Oh, I forgot to add a minus and save. This image is done perfectly fine. You have also learned a new thing which is called rotation in Tailwind CSS. Now let's start working on the next div which has these text in here. So in the next div that we have, let's create an h1 tag which has the text host your website in less than 5 minutes. Okay, and then we have a paragraph right that. We have a form. So let's create that form. I'll keep the action as empty for now. And within it, we have an input which has a type of email, and we'll keep the placeholder as enter email address. And then apart from that, we also have a button which says join waitlist. Okay, we have all the text. Now we just have to add some styling to make it look good. So let's do that. Let's first style our h1, which is host your website in less than 5 minutes. So I'll go to my h1, give it a class of text size. Since it's pretty big, I will give it 5XL, which is around 48 pixels. I will also give it a font of bold and save. Refresh. Yes, now it's better, but you can see there is more spacing in between. Now, so how we can add line height in Tailwind CSS? So let's search for line height. So line height is denoted by leading. So we want line height of say 1.25. So leading tight should be good. So let me add that in here. Let's add leading tight, save. Refresh. Yes, now it has some spacing in between. There is one thing to note here. The font that we are seeing here is different from what we are seeing here. So from Codewell, I got to know that this font is Playfair Display that is available in Google Fonts, and the rest is Lato. So let's see how we can add our custom font family in Tailwind CSS. So let's search for font family. So we have 3 default font family: font sans, font serif and font mono, and the default one that is currently being used on our website is font sans. Now for adding our new font to this font family, like the default one, we can go to this customizing the default font, and here within extend in our tailwind.config.js file, we just have to specify our font family. It's as simple as that. So let's search for Playfair Display Font in Google Fonts. So I've already selected all the font sizes. Now when we go to this import and copy this line from here, I just have to paste this line in my input.css file on the top. Once done, I have to go to my tailwind.config file. Here write font family, and within it I can give it any name. So let's call it Playfair, and then go back in here, copy the CSS rule that we have, and I can save it. So this will then import our Playfair. Let's see if it's available. If we go to our index.html file and write font, you can see apart from sans, serif and mono, we now have Playfair as well. Similarly, we can import Lato font. I'll go to the Google Fonts, and then I'll go to the import, copy these lines, paste it in our input.css file at the top, save it, and then go to our tailwind.config file and give it the name Lato, and again copy, paste it over here, save. Now if I go to my p tag and give it a class of say font, I can see along with sans serif, mono and playfair, I now also have Lato. So I'll add that and save. Let's see. Now if I go to my waitlist page, now it's looking very similar to what we have in here. Okay, so the heading part is done. Let's work on the paragraph tag. So we have given it a font of Lato. We can also make it a bit gray because it's gray on the main website. So I will give it a font color. So for giving the text color, I can simply write text, give it the color whatever we want. So I can give it gray and I will keep it say 400 and save it. The next thing that we have to work on is this one, the form that we have. Now we can see that they are kept side by side, but if we see here, they are kept one below the other. So for that, I again have to use a class of flex. I will give them flex column. So now they are coming one below the other, but there is also some gap between the two. So I will give it a gap of say 4 and save it. Okay, now there is also some gap. Let's start working on our input. This is pretty thin, but here it's very broad, and also the corner radius is a bit more. So I will give it a corner radius, border radius I would say, of MD. I'll give some padding as well. So I'll give it a padding from left to right as 4 and from top and bottom as 3 and save it. Now also apart from this, we have the text within it of the same color, that is gray. So I can use another property that is called placeholder. So I just have to prefix it with placeholder hyphen, and then I can use my all the utility classes that are available. So I can use text gray of similar to the one we have used above, 400, and save it. Refresh. Yes, now it's better. Let's work on the button now. For the button, I want to give it a background, so class of blue of say 500 and save. Yes. Now we need to also give it the same padding and also the border radius that we have given to the input box that we have. So let me copy these 3 from here and paste it over here. Save. Yes. But you can see that the text needs to be white, just like how it is here, and also it has bigger font weight. So for giving the font weight, I will write font, and then I'm given with n number of font weights that you have, like light, normal, medium, semi-bold, bold. So I'll give it a medium, and I will give it a text color of white and a font family of Lato. Save. Yes, now it's perfectly fine. But there is just one thing that we are missing out. There is spacing in between and in between these elements as well. So let's give that. I will go to my second div, give it a class of space of y of say 4. So what this is doing is, if I go within it and go for space between, space y is giving a margin top. So I want the margin top, instead of specifying it in all the components that I have, I'm specifying it at the top. And then also there is a margin top of around 16. Save it. Refresh. Yes. Now we have spacing in here and also in between the elements. Okay, we are also missing with this no spam ever, unsubscribe anytime section. Okay, I forgot to add that. Let's also create a div for it. And there is an image which is kept in the assets. Check mark. Give it a alt of empty, and then apart from that we have a paragraph tag and save it. Okay, they are coming one below the other, but we want them to be beside each other. So I'll use a class of flex and also give it a gap. Yes, now it's better, but I think we are missing on 2 things, the font and the color. Okay, so I will give it this paragraph a class of font Lato. I will give it a text color of gray 400. Save it. Yes. We are done with our main section. Let's move on to our footer section. So for the footer, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then we have any question section, which is used for if a person wants to talk to a specialist. Okay, let's create this. Let's head on to our footer. Within footer, I will create an ordered list, and it will have 3 list items. First is Facebook. Copy this list and paste it 2 more times. One for Instagram and the other one is for Twitter. Apart from that unordered list, we also have another div which has an image. So image is kept in my assets folder and the name is help avatar. I'll give it alt of empty. And then in another div, I have two more text which says have any questions and talk to a specialist. So I will create a p tag for have any questions. And then I'm going to create an a tag, talk to a specialist. Yes, we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Have any questions, talk to a specialist. We just need to add some styling to it. So let's first add it to the first unordered list that we have. So for this unordered list, I'll give it a class of flex so that they come side by side. Okay, now they are side by side, but there needs to be some spacing in between. So I'll give it a gap property, gap of say 6, and save. Refresh. Yes, now they have some spacing as well. Also, I will give them a font of Lato and also a text gray of 400. I'm giving it in the parent class so that I don't have to give it individually in all the child elements. So I'm saving it. Yes, this is fine. So for this particular div, the avatar is fine. Besides the avatar, I want this have any question and talk to a specialist section. So I am going to use a class of flex again. I'll save it. Now they are side by side, and also I need to correct the spacing in between these two elements and also the font. So for the spacing, let me give it a gap of around 2, and then for the have any question, I'll give it a class of a font of Playfair instead of Lato because it's different from talk to a specialist, and for this I'll give it a class of Lato and save. Yes, now it's better. It's just that I guess this talk to a specialist is a bit bold and this is a bit thin, so I'll give it a font thin, which will add a font weight of 100 to it. Refresh. Yes, this talk to a specialist can be made a bit bold, so I'll keep it medium. Save it. Yes, now it's looking a bit better. It's just that we need to have some spacing in between these two. So let me do one thing to this footer. I'll give it a class of flex and give it the direction of column, and also there needs to be some gap, so I'll give it a gap of 12 and save. Okay, I think we are forgetting one thing. We haven't given the font to our hoster is hiring button. So let's add that last thing as well. And here I will add the font as Lato. Save. So congratulations, we have successfully built the mobile layout for this website. So if you have reached up to this point and enjoying this video so far, do hit the subscribe button down below, which helps me keep motivated to make more such videos. Now it's time to learn one of the very core concepts in Tailwind CSS, which is responsive designing. So if we go in here and search for responsive design, so in Tailwind, we have certain breakpoints readily available like SM, MD, LG, XL and 2XL, which are based on the common device resolutions. So this SM and smaller is generally for mobile, MD is generally for tablets, LG is for desktop, and XL and 2XL are for more bigger screens. So in order to have certain of these breakpoints in our Tailwind CSS, we just have to write SM : and then specify the utility class we want to use for that particular breakpoint. Let's try to understand this with an example. In general, you have a width of 16 for your default screen, but say you want on the medium screen increase the width to 32. So you can simply write MD : and then use the utility class to increase the width, that is width of 32. And on LG, you want more bigger width. So you can write LG and give it a width of 48. So similarly, we are going to transform our mobile screen to a tablet screen to see what all changes we need to make in our project. So we are now going to work for the MD screen that is going to have a minimum width of 768 pixels. So in the tablet view, we have more padding from top and bottom and left and right. Apart from that, initially in the mobile view, we had this form components one below the other, but now we have them side by side. Apart from that, this footer section also, both the components were one below the other, but now we have them side by side. So we need to start working on that. So let's move on to our project. So here in the project, let's first increase the padding for the medium screen. So in the medium screen, I'll keep the padding from left and right as 10, which is around 40 pixels, and I will give the padding of Y to be say 7. Okay, save it. Let's increase the size to around medium screens, which is here. Now you can see as I'm moving from here to here, the padding is increased. We can also increase this image size a bit. So I will go in here, and for the medium screen, I can give it a more height. So I will give it a bit bigger height of around say 72. And then I'm going to copy this for the rest of the images as well and save it. Let's see. Refresh. Yes, now it's a bit bigger. The next thing is we just need to keep them side by side, these form elements. So I'll go to my form section. Initially, I had a flex of direction as column. Now I want it to be row. So I'll give it MD and give it a flex direction of row and save. Let's see. Yes, we have now it in the row format, but as I minimize the screen, it is in column, but now it's in row. That's the beauty of Tailwind CSS. You can just write simply MD and then it gets transformed for the medium screen. The last is to have them side by side. Okay, so I will go within this section. Initially, I had a flex column. So for the medium screen, I'll give it flex column flex row direction, and give it a justify between property so that they are set apart. Yes, so if I minimize this, I have them here, and then as I maximize it, it is turning to this one. So we are done with our medium screen as well. It was as simple as that. Now let's head on to our desktop view. In the desktop view, we can observe some major changes. Apart from the padding and all that has increased, we can observe two major changes. In the header, we have another section in here which says plans, find domain, and buy hoster. And instead of those three bars, we have sign in and join waitlist button, which is similar to the button that we have in here. And also in the main section, this image is shifted to the right and the text has come to the left. So we will be learning some major concepts in Tailwind CSS with this one. So let's start working on it. So I'll first increase the padding. So for the large screen, I'll increase the padding of X to be say 16 and save. See, go to my page. Let me increase this and situate fine. Okay, the padding has increased. Now we have to work on the header section. So in the header section, this icon that we had initially is hidden. So I will give it a class of hidden. So this is one of the display properties that we have in CSS. So display hidden means display as none. So in the large screen, this icon will get hidden. Let's see if it works. I'll save it and refresh. Yes, it's hidden. But as I shorten the screen, it's now visible. So that's what we wanted to achieve. Now let's also add the rest of the sections as well. So we have to make two more sections. One is an unordered list, and then second is our div. So in the first unordered list, we have 3 list items. Okay. And then in the another div, we have again a tag and then a button which says join waitlist. Save. Let's see. Okay. These are coming one below the other, but we want them side by side. So we are again going to use the flex property. So let's work on this unordered list. I'll give it a class of flex, but remember that flex is only given for the large screen, and apart from that, it's going to remain hidden. So I will keep it hidden for the screen smaller than the large screen. And for the large screen, I'm going to give it a property of flex. Save it. Refresh. Yes. And if I'm minimizing it, it's going away. Okay. Let's also add some other properties like justify and also item center. And apart from that, I'm going to give it a font of Lato. The text is going to be gray 400 and save it. Also, there was some spacing in between. So I'll give it a gap property, gap of say 6 and save. I can write LG in front of them as well, but since it's hidden, so these property won't obviously be working for the screen smaller than large. So I'm not just prefixing them with large. You can also prefix all of them like this. So I'll save. Yes. So now it's working perfectly fine. Now let's start working on this sign in and join waitlist. For this, again, I'm going to give it a class of hidden for rest of the things. And then for the large one, it will become flex. I will give them justify center property, keep them in the center vertically, give them a font of say Lato, and text color I am going to give it separately for these two. So I'll save, and also there is some gap, so I'll give it a gap of 6 and save. Yes, it's fine. Let's work on this sign in. I will give it a class of text of gray 400, similar to the above ones. And apart from that, I will give it a font of Lato. Save. Yes. Sign in is also similar. Now we just need to work on the join waitlist. So if you observe this join waitlist and this button, these are very similar. Now I can simply just copy all the Tailwind CSS that I've written in here and paste it over here. That's one option, but I have a better option to do it. What I can do is I can create a component in Tailwind CSS, and then I can simply use that component name instead of writing this whole big line every time I want to create similar items. So let me copy this. I will go to my input.css file. So within component layer, I want to create this button. So let me first create it. Let's call this button. This is similar to how we write classes in vanilla CSS. So I will have to use this apply and paste it over here. Let's see what this apply does. So let's go to functions and directives and search for apply. So this apply is basically used to inline any existing utility classes into your own custom CSS. So when we want to create our custom CSS, maybe creating any component, we can use the existing utility classes in one go. And for that, we have to use this @apply directive. But it will not still work because we need to tell Tailwind CSS within which of the layers should it add this button. So I will have to use this layer directive and write component layer. So within the component layer, I want to add this button and save it. Now, if I go to my index.html file, in here, if I use a class of btn and save it, let's see if it's working. Yes, we are able to see the same button styles that are added in here. So it's better to also replace this one, this big line with btn and save it. Refresh. Let's see if it's working. Yes, both of them are now exactly similar and they are working in a similar manner. So we are done with this as well. Now the last thing that we are left to do is we need to have this image on the right and this text on the left. Okay. So for that, I will be using a class of flex for my large screen and save. Let's see. Yes, but we want both of these sections to take equal space on our desktop screen. So for that, we are going to use another property provided by Tailwind, which is called flex1. So what this flex1 is doing, this allows a flex item to grow and shrink as needed, ignoring its initial size. So whenever we want any items to take equal space in the flex, so we can use this flex1 property. So let's add this flex1 in both of the divs that we have. So for the large screen, we want flex1, and I'll copy this and paste it over here as well and save it. Let's see. Refresh. Yes, now they have equal spacing, but there's a problem. The image needs to come on the right and this needs to come on the left. So now we can make use of the order property that we have in flex. So this order helps in controlling the order of the flex and the grid items. So since we have two elements, so we have order 1 and order 2 properties available. So here on the large screen, I can give this as an order of 1. Which means it will come on the first when converting this to a flex, and this will come on order 2. So save it. Yes, now it's working perfectly fine. You can see that this has come to the right and this has come to the left, but you also need to be aware that if it's working fine on the small screen, so if I am minimizing it, it's still coming on the top and the text is at the bottom. We also need to increase the height of this image, and also this needs to be aligned to be a bit on the right. So for doing that, let me go to this image. First, increase the size of it for larger screen. Let's give it size height of 96, and similarly for the rest as well, and save. Let's see if the image size is increased. Yes. Now I also want that this image should be shifted to the right. So for doing that, I can give it a property of justify end so that it's horizontally aligned to the end, and save it. Yes, we are done with our project. Now let's see if it's looking fine on all the screen sizes. For that, we are going to install one Chrome extension called as responsive viewer. Let's install this one. If I'm on this website and I click on this, we are able to see this on all the screen sizes. Let me minimize it a bit. It's looking fine on all the screen sizes. On all the phones, it's coming perfectly fine. On the medium screen, it's fine. On the large screen as well, it's coming perfectly fine. Congratulations, we have successfully built a fully responsive waitlist page for this hoster hosting platform. If you have come this far, you should give yourself a pat on the back because it was not an easy ride. On the go, you learned a lot of fundamental as well as advanced topics of Tailwind CSS. Though I have not covered all the topics that are there and not all the utility classes have been covered, but I have tried to cover the major ones that are used by any web developer on a day-to-day basis. Now it's time for you to practice this project and also build some similar projects and become a pro at Tailwind CSS. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and do let me know in the comments what all type of videos you want me to make regarding Tailwind CSS in future. See you in the next one.